there are some people today that are being held captive by learning as much as they want to learn about their favorite celebrity. Case in point, like Cardi B. Cardi B's cool. She's cool. She's hustled her way to where she is. And, at the time of this recording, she just had a baby and she's got this boyfriend who's, NFL player. She had the, drama with her ex-husband. Have they gotten divorced? I don't know. Let's just say her ex-husband, one of the Migos. So it's a lot of stuff. But if you log into social media and you see the interactions amongst the fans, they are in tune. They could tell you what he did, what she did, what she didn't say. I mean, it's a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. I want to thank you all for tuning in as you do each and every week. Shout out to those of you who are watching on YouTube as well as Spotify. Man, check this out. I was sitting in my house the other day and I was watching TV and I just was flipping channels and I happened to come upon a channel. I'm not going to name the channel or the program. And they were talking about, this celebrity gossip or what have you was going on. And the thought hit me in that moment. I was just thinking, we really know too much. Like, we know way too much. And what brought me to that thought was the report that was being made. And again, I saw maybe 15 seconds of it. The celebrity who they were talking about, was going through some things and there was some rumors about infidelity with them and their spouse and former lover and all kind of stuff. So, and I'm like, why is this news? Like, we know way too much. And it got me to thinking, like, and I know we haven't always been like this. And I also understand that there's a segment of society that likes and is entertained by that type of news or whatever. And that's cool. It ain't never been my steez. It ain't never been my kick or how I get down. I came up in a different era. Um, I always say, like, back then, if you came up in the 70s and the 80s and in the 90s, like, you did what you did, but you didn't really worry too much about things that happened outside of where you were. So, gossip and stuff like that, I'm not going to tell you that it didn't exist. I don't want to paint that picture at all. What I will say is that, like, I think the idea of sharing everything has really gone to a whole nother level. And what I mean by that is I know someone personally. I'm not going to mention their name, but they went on a very popular TV show back in the day, and this was like in the 90s, I think, late 90s, I want to say, or maybe early 2000s. They went on a very popular TV show where I'll just give you a hint. The host, his audience would scream his name and they would chant, and there would usually be a fight or something like that. A lot of paternity tests. But nonetheless, I know someone who went on his show and she said some things. I'm not going to get into what she said, but what I will say is this, because I'm sure she's going to see this episode, and she knows who she is, and I think we've laughed about it before, but nonetheless, the moral of the story is that she got on the show and she said and fabricated a bunch of stuff that didn't happen in her life, and the thing is that there was nobody to verify that it did or didn't happen. And what she got out of it was, I guess, a level of publicity. Um, I guess a level of fame, I guess, if 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 you want to be famous. Um, but there was nobody there to verify that any of the stuff that she said actually happened. Because I know her, I know that it didn't happen. And I'll be honest, I wasn't even mad at her, but it was just like, that's where we were. And that's where we were, but that's not where we always were, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is, again, I came up in an era where They always told us a child is to be seen and not heard. So, and then they also told us keep our family business in our house. What goes on in our house doesn't leave this house. And so you couldn't tell what happened in your house to your friend down the street. And your friend who lived down the street couldn't tell you what happened in his house or her house. It just wasn't like that. The adults made sure that they let us know that family business stayed family business. And there was some pushback, there was some fallout from that because every family has issues. I don't care who you are. You could be a great family, you could be a bad family, you could be a family with no money, you could be a family that's billionaire. Everybody's got some type of family issues. Some issues are bigger than others, but everybody has family issues, my family included. Um, that being said, it ain't for the world to know, right? But we got to a place where the world wanted to know. And then as we moved into the 2000s and the aughts, where cameras, cell phones, social media became involved, we became even more thirsty for what was happening inside people's houses. I mean, like the birth of reality TV changed everything. Um, I wasn't someone who watched The Real World, but I knew that it existed. I saw a couple of episodes. Um, and it was entertaining for those who wanted to be entertained like that. I didn't particularly care for it, but it was popular in that era. Then when you moved on and moved further down the road to the Housewives series and Love and Basketball and Love and Hip Hop and Love and Brunch and I don't know. No, I vaguely know any of these things. I remember one time I was in the airport and I was talking to this guy, didn't know, a stranger, and he was like, "Where you flying to?" I was like, "I'm flying back home to Atlanta." He's like, "Oh, you live in Atlanta?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Do you ever see any of the Housewives?" Are you serious, dude? You do know that these housewives aren't even married. In fact, the houses that you see on TV aren't their houses. But that's another story for another day. Um, but yeah, it became about, putting our business. We went from an era of keeping our family business or the things that happened with us personally, putting it on Front Street, on TV, on social media for the world to see. Now, I say this as someone who, in what was it, 2017? No, 2007. I started a blog that still exists to this day. And I talked about some personal things, but I'll be honest, I've never told a lie on that blog, but I've also never said something on that blog that I wouldn't say in front of my mom or in front of a church or in front of a committee. My deepest, darkest secrets didn't go on that blog. I do have some deep, dark secrets. I ain't gonna tell y'all that. But my point in making that is that, like, we got to a point where sharing was okay. And then oversharing was almost to be expected. But we know too much. We really, really know too much. And I know that um as someone who grew up in the era that I grew up in, we weren't told to ask because you didn't ask people because you didn't want to know. You didn't, in a lot of ways, we didn't care. Like, so we cared about celebrities and athletes, but like, that's kind of like where it stopped. Like, your fandom went to that celebrity, your fandom went to that athlete. I've said many a time, like, my favorite basketball player ever is Michael Jeffrey Jordan. I think he's the greatest I don't think he's the greatest basketball player I've ever seen. Now, where you rank him, I don't care. He's the GOAT to me. That being said, like, it worked out for Michael in large part too, because he didn't have to come through the social media era. Mike, if you know Mike was that dude. Mike did a lot of things that did not mesh with the public persona that you may or may not have had for him. Yeah, he was a pitch man for Nike, he was a pitch man for Gatorade, and pitch man for McDonald's, all of that stuff. And he was, bright. He was obviously talented. Um, Women thought he was sexy. He had a bald head. He could jump out the sky. and he was the greatest basketball player on the court. But off the court, Mike lived a different life. And it was funny as people, a few years back during COVID, when the series The Last Dance, when the document series came out, um, people there were a generation of people who came up with me who was surprised by a lot of what they found in that documentary. And we knew, if you're a fan, you knew all of that. Like Mike he wasn't the most genuine guy. He wasn't the most likable guy. He was hard on his teammates at times. Mike had his vices. Mike, despite being married, Mike had hoes. Let me stop. Mike had women. I mean, he is documented that he allegedly paid for an abortion for one woman. Mike got out there. Mike smoked, drank. You know, he it's funny because like if you look at him now, he had I think it was right before his last retirement. He showed up at the press conference with his I think it's his right index finger in a splint, and they asked him what happened to his finger, and he said he cut his finger cutting a cigar with a cigar cutter. But he's severed a tendon in his finger, so he can't. So his fingers, if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, his finger sticks out like this, like he can't bend the finger. So anyway, I think Mike cut his finger chopping up some weed. That's just, but I mean, but that's how it was. Like we didn't care. Like athletes and entertainers, we didn't care. We didn't. They lived their lives, and there was very little about them that we knew. Um, I don't know who Joe Montana voted for in the '84 election. I don't care. I don't know if he voted for Reagan or not. He may have. He may not have voted at all. I don't know. But we didn't care. And like we were taught that there were certain boundaries that you put because people had their business and they kept their business to themselves and they shared what they wanted to share. But right now we know too much. I mean, like, and I talked about it on the Rap Soul podcast, and it's worth repeating. Um, the whole thing with Puff, right? Puff Daddy, y'all know. Um, Puff at the time of this recording is serving a what is it, 4-year sentence? I think he's got a 4-year sentence for prostitution, and we heard about, what we heard at his trial about everything that happened, from the prostitution to the freak offs to, any and everything in between. And I learned a lot about Puff. Well, let me take that back. I learned a few things about Puff that I didn't necessarily need to know about his personal life. Now, I'll be honest. Some of the things that was mentioned in his trial and leading up to the trial and the gossip and the tea and the headlines and all of that stuff, um, I'd heard before. Um, I'd heard about Puff's uh, sexuality, that he was into men. I heard that. I heard that he had a temper, and I heard that from people who were close to him. And I heard that years ago. I mean, it wasn't nothing new. I heard that he dabbled in with some of his artists or whatever like that. Um, I heard that, a male and female, sexually. And so like a lot now, the whole thing about him beating up Cassie, his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, I did not know until I saw that video. Um, and I mentioned it before. And it's worth repeating. I was never like a fan of Puff. It didn't make me cut Puff off because I ain't been rocking with Puff for a long time. Um, but like I was a Biggie fan, so Puff was there. So it's kind of like okay, he cool. He would be with Big. But nonetheless, I learned a lot about, and I think we all did. We learned a lot about Puff that we didn't necessarily need to know. Like I don't need to know that you get off by watching someone else have sex with your woman. Are there a lot of people in this world that do that? Yeah, yeah. Some might find it strange. Some may find that to be a turn on. Personally, it's never some shit I'm doing, but you know my motto. We're all freaks, some just bigger than others. But that level of freakdom, hey, I ain't even on that level. I'm down here. I'm way down here. But what that taught us that is that, like I said, we just know too much. I found out way and some of that stuff, or at least most of the stuff, I will assume that is true. Um, it's way more than I need to know about Puff. I don't need to know how Puff likes it, how he likes his women, how he likes his men. I don't need to know none of that stuff. But here we are. We just really, really know way too much. And I'm from an era where we didn't know as much. So that's really a conflict for me. And now it is time to take a quick commercial break. On the other side of the break, I'll tell you a little bit about more of what we should not know. Sit tight. We'll be back in just a second. We are back. Once again, it's your boy 12 Kyle. This is the 12 Kyle podcast, and we're talking about the things that we just know way too much about. I mentioned athletes and entertainers, and I want to pick up right there because uh, one of the things that I used back in the day to learn about my favorite entertainer was this thing called Right On Magazine. Right On Magazine was a black magazine that was aimed at, teens and adolescents and young adults. Um, and while it did not delve into any celebrity gossip, it gave us an idea or an attempt to learn more about our favorite stars. Like I'll give you an example. I remember reading Right On Magazine, and there was an article about Michael Jackson and what he does each day. And in the article, it highlighted what he ate for breakfast. Now, for me, a kid that's, 11, 12 years old, I don't really care about what Michael eat for breakfast. I mean, I guess if he ate Fruit Loops and I grew up eating Fruit Loops, I guess that would be quite, oh man, Michael Jackson and we eat the same Fruit Loops. Outside of that, I mean, I don't really care about what Mike ate for breakfast. Um, but that's how we learned a little bit about our celebrities. And I thought that was always cool because it gave us a small peek behind the curtain as to what our celebrities liked, what they disliked. Um, Back in the day, you could be a part of what they call a quote unquote fan club. If you were part of a fan club, you could write letters and maybe they'd send you a poster and maybe they'd send you an autograph poster. So it was those type of things. And I know that the 70s and the 80s are totally different from 2026. I get it. There's no such thing as fan clubs anymore, at least I would assume. Um, and if Right On Magazine is still in publication, I don't think that it is, but without looking it up. But if it is, I mean, everything that you probably want to get from Right On Magazine, you probably could get from Instagram because instead of, purchasing a Right On magazine to find out what Beyonce eats for breakfast, you can go to her Instagram page. I'm sure she has a spread somewhere on her Instagram page as to what she and Blue Ivy were eating for breakfast. Um, but that was just our introduction. And I think that served its purpose. And it also allowed us just to get a peek, and it was enough to pique our interest, but it wasn't enough to hold us captive. And I think there's some people today that are being held captive by learning as much as they want to learn about their favorite celebrities. Case in point, like Cardi B. Cardi B's cool. She's cool. I've watched her, rise. I'm not a fan of her music. I mean, if it comes on, I don't turn it off, but I don't really listen to her music like that. Um, but she's hustled her way to where she is. And, at the time of this recording, she just had a baby and she's got this boyfriend who's, NFL player. And, she had the, drama with her ex-husband. Have they gotten divorced? I don't know. Let's just say her ex-husband, one of the Migos. Um, so it's a lot of stuff. But if you log into social media and you see the interactions amongst the fans, like they are in tune. They could tell you what he did, what she did, what she didn't say, what this one, they have screenshots of this woman accusing her ex-husband of buying her a bag. They have this voice note recording of this woman saying he took me to Paris while you were pregnant. I mean, it's a lot. And I just made that up. I don't know. I'm just giving examples. But it's a lot. And I'm like, why does this matter to you? Like, I don't know. I mean, like, Here's the thing, and social media, I mentioned social media, so we might as well touch on it. Social media, I've said for the longest, has been the gift and the curse. Particularly, things like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Um, and I say that as someone who has all of that. Twitter was a thing. It was a really big thing for me several years ago. And then everybody showed up. And was that because I got to Twitter when nobody was there. And so I'm a Twitter OG. I literally been on Twitter since what, 2008, I think. Yeah, I think that's when I got to Twitter, 2008. And nobody was on Twitter. Like I mentioned before, and it's worth repeating. Like our tweets were so infrequent. The 10 people that you followed, like you might send one tweet a day, and our tweets were so infrequent that I would literally get text messages when somebody sent it, that I followed sent a tweet. Man, can you imagine that now? Getting a text message every time somebody tweets that you follow. Um, but here's the thing about the social media being the gift and the curse. You could send a tweet right now to your favorite athlete or celebrity, and they will probably, at the very least, see it. They may not respond unless they're Kevin Durant, but they will at least see it. You could send Steph Curry a tweet right now, and he's probably going to see it. You can send LeBron James a tweet right now, and he's probably going to see it. You could send a tweet to the leader of the free world, your president, and he could see it. He might not respond, but he would see it. And so if we think about it, that's really, really weird. Like we shouldn't have that kind of access. But in being able to get in contact or tweet to LeBron or Steph Curry or Kevin Durant, or Jamie Foxx, in being able to do that, you're also able to see what it is that they're doing. So if I don't know, if Beyonce goes on a walk with her dog, if she live streams on Instagram, I can see that. I think that could also be problematic because why do I need to know what Beyonce's neighborhood looks like? Why do I need to know what her dog looks like? Why do I need to know what she ate for breakfast? It's a lot, man. It really, really is a lot. And so the ultimate question is, why are we so invested in the lives of others when it comes to celebrities, athletes, entertainers, or just regular Joe or Jane? And we're so consumed by what it is that they're doing. Why do we know so much about everybody and everything? Why does that matter to us? What does that say about us? Does that mean that we're thirsty? Does that mean that we seek knowledge? Does that mean that we seek so much to be entertained? Why are we so invested? Like, there is a celebrity rapper who has a nation of fans. I'm not going to mention her name. You know who she is. And if you say one bad thing about her, oh boy, her legion of fans will attack you, quote unquote, on social media. I got nothing bad to say about it. I don't listen to her music, so it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. But there are people that exist like that. And I'm like, she don't even know you. She don't even know that you exist. You send tweets to her account saying how beautiful she is, how great she is. You get online and defend her, and she's never said a word to you. And honestly, she probably won't. And you support her and you go to her concerts and all of this stuff. You buy her merch. And there's nothing wrong with it. You should support your people. But why are you so invested? That's just something that I really can't put my finger on or really wrap my head around. Why? I think the reason why is that we just know way too much. And the more we know, the more we're invested in these people. Maybe we shouldn't know as much as we do. Maybe we shouldn't share as much as we do. I talk about it all the time. Just on a personal note, if you follow me on Facebook or Instagram, you'll probably see more clips from either of my podcasts than you will pictures of me doing things or me and my family or me and my friends hanging out. You won't. And it's not to say that I don't have those moments, but those aren't meant for sharing. And it's not to say that we don't take pictures, because we do. We take a lot of pictures. Every picture don't get posted. It doesn't. And I hang out with my friends all the time. I can't, and I'm just thinking like my Instagram right now. Without looking at it, I don't know that in 2025 that there's been more than 10 pictures of me and my friends hanging out having a good time. I'm guessing. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I don't. And it's not, again, it's not to say that we don't take pictures and post videos and stuff like that. We do. We have a good time. I have a good time when I'm with my friends. But a lot of the stuff doesn't get posted. And then there's a segment of society that believes if you're not posting those things, then you're not having a good time. You're not outside. I'm always outside. I'm always having a good time. I'm either with my wife, I'm with my family, or I'm with my homeboys. And sometimes I do stuff by myself. I live in Atlanta. It's a beautiful city. I will go kick it by myself sometimes. Sometimes I'll go meet up with the fellas. We'll go catch a game. Sometimes I'm a basketball fan. I love the Hawks. Sometimes I'll go to the Hawks game. It don't necessarily have to be posted, but I don't think that I've created something to where people are that invested in me to where they gotta see what I'm doing. Of course, I'm not a celebrity either. I don't have a million followers, and to be quite honest, I don't want a million followers. Do I want a million people to listen to this podcast? Sure. But the reality is this podcast isn't structured to where a million people would listen. Because even an opinion such as this doesn't really speak to the masses. If anything, it holds a mirror to your face. And looking in the mirror for some is very, very uncomfortable. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We drop new podcasts weekly. Also, we have a new baby. It's called the Rap Soul Podcast. It is my personal music podcast. If you listen to this podcast and you like me and you're into music, on that podcast, on the Rap Soul Podcast, we talk about music and artists from the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s when it comes to rap, soul, hip hop, and R&B. I'll be honest, it's the best music podcast that you've never heard. So make sure that you check it out. You can find it wherever you're listening or watching this podcast. Also, if you'd like to contribute to this podcast financially, hit us up on Cash App, $TWELBEKYLE. And lastly, we have merch. If you'd like to buy 12 Kyle Podcast merch, click the link in the description box, and there you can buy 12 Kyle Podcast t-shirts, hoodies, as well as coffee mugs. We got it for the low. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle Podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000. Cheers.